Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Dr. Joey interviews Christian business professionals just like you to discover their secrets for working faith positive in a negative world. Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett.
Hey, Faith Positive Nation, when I say the word midlife, what comes to your mind? Oh, wait a minute. Don't hit pause. Don't stop the podcast, right? Midlife is quickly followed if we were playing a word association game, right? If I said midlife, you would say what? Crisis, right? I mean, that's the way we think about it. And there are enough crises in life without us having to welcome them. And yet, if you live long enough, you will reach a point in your life, if God is good to you and lets you hang around, right, you're going to reach a point where midlife is what people use to describe you, right? And then sometimes if you lose your hair early, like some people we know, right, such as podcast hosts, they think you're in midlife before you really are. Now, okay, so the Chinese word for crisis is actually represented by two characters in Mandarin Chinese. One character means danger, right? And the other means opportunity. So at midlife, we can look at this accumulation of experiences and things that we've encountered, and then the changes that we go through as danger, or we can see it as an opportunity in which we can continue to grow in our spiritual development. So which is it going to be for you, or which is it for you? And today's guest, Faith Positive Nation, is particularly interested in if you're at midlife and you're a woman. Now, we guys can learn a lot, right? Because if you've been married and or you're in a relationship with a woman who's in midlife, you need what today's guest is going to bring to you. And if you're a woman who's in midlife, approaching midlife, or just trying to get through it, right? Today's guest has some amazing information for you, how this can be an opportunity for God to really touch you, bless you, and move you forward into some of the best days of your life ever. I've known her about 100 years, although obviously she aged a lot better than me. But we have known each other for more than a few decades. I ain't saying how many. Faith Positive Nation, please help me welcome my dear friend, Peggy Haymes. Peggy, welcome to Faith Positive Radio.
Hey, Joey, I am glad to be here. It's great to reconnect with you.
Oh, it is my pleasure. So what do most people think as you're coaching them, providing resources for Christian women, particularly in midlife? How do most people respond when they hear that word midlife?
They respond with a lot of anxiety, and there's this association that once we reach midlife, everything's going to fall apart. And we're going to sabotage ourselves. We're going to go crazy. We're going to leave relationships. We're going to mess up our lives. And it's just all of this awfulness. And it doesn't have to be that way.
That's right. I guess that's why I laughed. I realized I laughed when you said things are going to fall apart, and I'm laughing, right? that probably wasn't the most empathic emotion I could have shared, so I apologize for that. But yeah, that is the notion that we oftentimes set up in our minds when we say midlife crisis, right? Nothing's falling apart.
And one of the things that happens when you look at something through that lens, you set yourself up that whatever happens has to be a crisis. And even if it's a normal developmental phase, it gets framed in this prism of crisis.
Yeah.
And so that sets us down a road that's not a really great road. There's a lot of power if we just frame things differently. And if we understand that midlife is really a normal developmental phase, just like we go through adolescence, we go through midlife, and it's a time where we evaluate things, we evaluate relationships, and we especially evaluate our relationship with ourselves and start asking some of the same questions that we had as adolescents of, who am I? What is my life about? What matters in my life? It's like we get a second pass at those questions.
That might be why my wife tells me on occasion that I'm acting like a 17-year-old boy, right?
Or not.
Yeah, because we go through that whole adolescence thing again, right? Yeah, well, neuroscientists who study this incredible brain God's given us refer to what you're talking about as predictive encoding. Maybe a more common way of talking about it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if I think I get to this stage of my life and everything's going to fall apart, guess what? Everything starts falling apart. Or even if it's not falling apart, I think it's falling apart, which is the same thing because my brain can't distinguish between reality and fear. So it just starts sending it around my amygdala 10 times, and then it's a done deal for me, and I start fulfilling it. So really what you're talking about is helping women, in particular Christian women, right, come to midlife and interpret it differently than culture might tell them to interpret it. So how do you help them? How do you coach them, provide resources to them to do that?
I help them to embrace this transition. And part of it is looking back at their lives. You know, a lot of people who work in this area, they're just completely focused on, we got to focus on the present and not look back at all. And I think one of the great treasures of midlife is to look backwards. And one of the things I actually do in my groups is I have the women make a list of their regrets. Now, that's not to make them feel bad.
Right.
All of us get to this stage in life and we have regrets, and they may even be things that turned out beautifully for us. You know, I went down this road instead of another one, and my life has been really good, but that meant I never had the chance to do X, Y, and Z. So what we do is we listen to those regrets to hear the essence of them, because sometimes what we didn't get earlier in our lives, we can create in a different form in midlife.
And that's what you were talking about earlier, is some of those same questions that we ask in adolescence, we're asking at midlife, so we get a second pass at it. So I have an opportunity by listing these regrets, then to say, okay, now what if I can act on it and create a different ideology for myself around that?
Yes, and a big part of midlife, I talk about women reclaiming their voice. I talk about reclaiming your heart, reclaiming your voice, and reclaiming your story, reclaiming the power to write your own story. And one of the things that happens with women in midlife is, for many of them, if you have raised kids, then hopefully they are on their own.
I heard the emphasis on hopefully right there, because there's this whole failure to launch thing.
All right. But they don't need you to parent them in the same way.
Yeah.
So there's more freedom there. For some of us with careers, we've hit that point of, okay, we've built the career. We're in the job we wanted to be in. Now what? Now what to do? So midlife is that chance to listen to ourselves and to listen to what God is calling us to do in this next phase of life. And to not be determined, whatever happened in all of those years up to midlife, that doesn't have to determine who we are and where we go in the next phase of our journey.
So the crisis is not so much a danger, it's an opportunity to reclaim my voice and to write my own story. So how do I, or a new story, right?
Right.
So how do I go about doing that as a Christian woman in the world today?
I think part of the issue for women of faith is that part of what we re-examine is what we believe about God and what we believe about faith. Because when you live to this point in life, you have probably seen some really hard things happen. You've seen wonderful people get sick. You've seen people die way too young.
Yeah, that's hard.
You know, you may have had to deal with chronic illnesses with yourself or someone you love. And they're all things that can question how we look at the world and how we look at how God works in the world. That can either be a danger or an opportunity.
Yeah, it can be.
You know, it's a danger if we get real scared about it. Like God is going to be offended if we ask a question. Which, like, is not the testimony.
I laughed again. I apologize. Yeah.
No, it's, I mean, it's
real. It's real. I'm just thinking, reading through scripture, if you just read the Psalms and looked at all the questions that David asked of God, I don't think you're going to offend God by asking hard questions.
Right. And so we start, reevaluating, and what does faith mean to me, and how do I live out my faith?
Mm.
And for some women, it's really painful because they realize that the faith that serves them very well to this point
Mm-hmm.
isn't quite big enough, or isn't quite deep enough.
Mm.
And so it's being able to let go of the bathwater without throwing out the baby.
Yeah, because as you've accumulated, when you get to midlife, you've accumulated enough, as you're calling them, hard experiences, right? To where your God's either gotten smaller or bigger,
Mm-hmm.
because that contraction and expansion of your understanding of God is directly related to what you've lived through. So you can say, well, look at what I've lived through. He's Jehovah Jireh. He's provided all along the way. Or you can say, wow, look at these horrible things that God let happen. So how do you, and again, it's mindset, right? We can talk about it as faith, right? But it's that mindset that you bring your faith to. How do you help Christian women at midlife to expand, to understand the vastness of God and God's love for them?
Well, that's $1 million question.
Thank you.
I'm not sending you a check, but that's a $1 million question.
All right. Yeah. Well, that would probably create a crisis for me because I wouldn't know what to do with it if you said it. So I can't take this from Peggy. She's my friend.
I think part of it is reconnecting with that trust.
Oh, that's a huge word,
is
trust,
okay.
isn't it?
That we can trust God, and we can trust God with our whole selves. Another part of this is accepting who we are, and that we are beloved daughters of God. Life has all of these ways of telling us how we don't measure up. And especially for women in midlife, you start feeling invisible.
Yeah.
Your hair is white.
Yeah. Or
Well,
women experience thinness of hair, so maybe not bald, but yeah.
But there are all of these different ways where you're told don't measure up, or you're aged out at work. If you lose a job, you realize nobody wants to hire someone at my age. And so to reconnect with that primary gift of our identity as God's children, and to trust God, and to trust God's acceptance and love, and that we can still grow into the fullness of who God wants us to be, who and what God desires us to be, and that can be a joyful thing. I teach a Sunday school class at my church, and yesterday we were talking about Tabitha and her ministry among the widows, and one of the women in the class had this great line, and I'm not going to quote it directly, but it was that God calls us out of our giftedness. And so to rediscover, for a lot of women at this age, it's rediscovering those things that you love, those things that make you come alive. And then seeing God's presence and hearing God's calling in those.
Yeah, and that's so countercultural, Peggy, because as you were saying, society values women a lot for their looks. As we like to think we've come a long ways, but still, media is saturated, right? Whether it's the music industry or even news channels, right? There's always a story about some beautiful woman, and youth is treasured, right? But I don't remember exactly which proverb it is, but it says gray hair, right, is the hallmark of wisdom or something like that. So
I believe that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm there. So there's this whole visual appearance thing that it's for men, but more so for women. And so if I'm known by certain markers like my physical attractiveness and other things, and then suddenly the body changes, right? There are physiological changes that happen at midlife, and I'm not that woman anymore. Then I'm living in a world of conditional love. And so to be able to reclaim my identity, which, oh, by the way, has been my identity all along as a daughter of Christ, right? And I am unconditionally loved. To be able to reclaim that at midlife is an amazing, amazing gift that you're giving to Christian women there. What are some of the challenges, besides the obvious physical changes, what are some of the challenges that women have for living into that identity reveal at a new age?
I think one of the challenges is circumstances. A number of women at this age go through the process of caring for an elderly parent.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of times a lion's share of caregiving can fall on them. And you have to give so much of you that there's not much left. And so either in the midst of that caregiving or when that season comes to an end, of asking the question of, okay, what do I do now?
Wow, that is a huge challenge, because then your identity is, a little more of your identity is lost, because oftentimes when that caregiving ends, it's because a parent passed away, and sometimes both parents, well, eventually both parents passed. And so you have that feeling of being an orphan, right? So there's an opportunity, a great challenge to re-identifying yourself as a daughter of the Father.
One of the other challenges is just allowing ourselves the time and the resources to do it, because we grow up with this template of being a good woman is sacrificing everything for everybody else.
Yeah.
And it's about doing without. And I cannot tell you how many women have come to me and said, but I feel selfish doing this.
Wow.
And so to rewrite that script, that it is okay. You know, it's not an either or. We don't have to shut everybody else and their needs out of our lives. But if we take the time to tend to our own lives,
yes,
then the paradox is we wind up having more to give, because we're giving out of our fullness. We're giving out of those things that delight us, instead of giving out of that burden of shoulds. Well, I should do, I should.
Right.
And so there's a lot of freedom there, but we have to allow ourselves to get there and know that it's okay sometimes to say no to people. No, I can't do that. Even if it's to spend time on you and what you need in this process.
Yeah, because there is a great deal of freedom there. If I'm a mom, my children may be older, and as you alluded to a moment ago, hopefully launched, right? And they're taking care of themselves, doing their own thing, so they don't need us in the same way that they once did. And then if my parents have passed, they don't need me, and I've been caregiving, so that there's that freedom, that space to do something different. And yet that can be very frightening, especially for women, as you said, who've defined themselves as daughters of the King in terms of serving others exclusively. How do you help them transition into that discovery of this freedom can bring with it a new lease on life and a new calling on your life at midlife?
I think it goes back to those old lessons, going back to the foundational lessons of who we are as God's children, and what your image of God is.
Okay.
So if your image of God is one going, kind of like the Santa Claus making the list, and okay, you did 473 jobs at church, so you're on the good list.
This is not going to go well for me. I try to be good, but I don't think I can overcome by myself. I need some Jesus.
Don't we all?
Yeah, well, I'm keenly aware of it.
But one of the things that I do, and that's very important, and I think it's something that I really offer, is that I create a safe space for women to do this, whether it's one, whether it's in a group, whether it's encouraging. I send out an email every Monday morning for folks that encourages them.
Hmm.
So I create this really safe space where people can kind of take those baby steps
Hmm.
or say the things they've never really said out loud or try on something new. And it's
Hmm.
so funny.
I love that idea of groups because maybe I have yet to find my voice as a Christian woman at midlife, but maybe you have found something, and so you can speak that. And I know that to be true in my own life. So I gain courage and encouragement from you just hearing that. How do how do you coach these groups and offer resources to them, Peggy?
Well, I want to say, in addition to what you just said,
Uh-huh.
sometimes it's encouraging just being in a group that are everybody's asking the same questions.
Yeah, really.
Realize it's not just you.
I'm not alone. I'm not isolated because it really feels that way. And that's part of the satanic attack on identity is if you're a daughter of the Father, right? So let's separate you and say that you don't have this identity. But in that groupness, I find my identity because we're thinking the same things and asking the same questions, feeling the same feelings in our hearts.
So one of the ways I do this is I offer a 6-week group called Birthing a New Chapter.
Birthing
That,
a new chapter. I
yeah,
love
this
that,
is
man.
kind of what this is all about.
Uh-huh.
And we do a deep dive into these things. This is the one I mentioned where we start out looking at our regrets.
Mm.
And I share a video with them every week about one
Hmm.
of these aspects, and we have a group together where people can share back and forth, and I give assignments of,
Hmm.
okay, here's what was in the video. Here's how you apply it to your own life.
Mm.
Here's how you make it your own.
Hmm.
I'm also really excited that coming up this summer, I'm launching a membership of Good Life at Midlife group.
Good life at midlife. I'm loving it. That's a great name.
It kind of annoys me that it spells out glam because as you know, I'm like the most unglamorous woman you will ever meet. But be
Not to
that
be confused with beauty, though, right? Because you're beautiful. Yeah.
be that as it may, uh, one
Good
of my
life at midlife. I like that better than clam. Good life at midlife.
one of my real passions, and I started out as a dozen years ago as a therapist.
Uh-huh.
And I knew there were people who wanted to make changes in their life,
Mm-hmm.
but they would never show up in my office for a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Scheduling, finances,
Sure.
availability, whatever.
Right.
And so through this group, I have a chance to share all of these things that I've learned through the years.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes little things that if we just do them, they make these huge differences in our lives. Or
Mm.
sharing, as you do with your audience, about, hey, this is the amazing thing that they're learning about how our brains work.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
and
those small hinges swing some really big doors.
exactly. And to do that hand in hand with the spiritual piece
Mm.
as well,
Mm-hmm.
because, we're all whole beings. I remember learning in the Hebrew that um, the word in Hebrew for a person, it's spirit and body together.
Mm.
They were two different things.
Mm.
And so I really like that inclusivity of
Mm-hmm.
being our whole selves to this journey.
Yeah, it's one package, right?
Right.
Yeah, we're all packaged together. So does a Christian woman at midlife have to live near you to participate in these groups, or is there another way they can access it?
No, these are online groups.
Oh,
Um,
sweet. So I can
so
live anywhere and participate.
wherever you live. And actually, the way they're structured, it doesn't matter if you're in a different time zone. It doesn't matter if you're
Okay.
6 hours different from where I am.
Mm-hmm.
You can access whenever you access it.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll
Sweet.
be available anywhere, anytime.
Okay. So how can we find out more? Because I know there are Christian women who are in midlife right now that are listening to this podcast and going, I want some of that. I want to be a part of that group. How can we find out more?
You can find out more on my website at heartcallings.com. And you can find a link there if you're interested in one-to-one coaching. You can find about groups. You can find out when I post membership. My blog is there.
Sweet.
Also, you can sign up. I mentioned the emails. It's called Monday Morning Manna.
Okay.
And so it goes out every morning, every Monday morning.
Yeah.
And you can
Monday
sign up.
Morning Manna. I love that. That's great. And so the website is heartcallings.com. And Chuck has put it on Peggy's page on our website at getpositive.today. So if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on Spotify or something like that, just go to our website at getpositive.today and you'll be able to go there and find it. We don't want you injuring yourself while you're listening to this podcast doing something else, right? Whether it's a treadmill or walking.
Driving, don't look it up. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're cruising down the road, please keep both hands on the wheel. And we got your back and your front too. So just go to getpositive.today and Peggy's smiling face will be right there front and center, and you can just click on that and go to her page and find the link to heartcallings.com. So Peggy, Faith Positive Nation always wants to know from our guest about a favorite Bible verse or a favorite Bible passage. And I oftentimes, I know mine have changed through the years based on the season of life where I find myself. So I'm just guessing that there's a special favorite verse of yours that speaks to women at midlife.
I think it's one that speaks to all of us. And cool. Maybe it's front and center because I was just talking to someone about this morning.
Oh, sweet.
You know, we talk about all of these things that have happened up to this point in our lives. And as I said, sometimes they are really awful things. I love the passage at the end of the Joseph narratives where he has reunited with his brothers who sold him into slavery.
Oh, really?
And everything that happened. And he says, no, it's cool, guys. It's cool. You intended it for evil, but God used it for good. So I think there are things, not that God sends them to us, but life being life, things happen to us.
Yeah. And
part of the gift of midlife is being able to transform those things in whatever way, shape, or form for good.
Man, that's God's redemption in the world, right?
Absolutely.
Because bad stuff happens, and it's not necessarily because we're bad people. It just happens, right? We live in a negative world, and only God can take that through Jesus Christ and redeem our experiences. That's one of the blessings of midlife. You can look back and see, what your story is for how God took some of those bad things and really turned them around and redeemed them, because we know, as Paul tells us, that all things work together for good when we trust the Lord. So Peggy Haymes, heartcallings.com is the website. She is a coach, provides resources to Christian women in midlife. She is incredible. Please go to heartcallings.com right now. And if you're a guy at midlife, you heard a lot of good stuff, because you can write your story too. You can list out your regrets and allow God to redeem that. And so there's been some great resources shared with us today. Peggy, thank you so much. I appreciate your generosity. Your wisdom is immense and your heart is huge. So I thank you for the gift of you today on Faith Positive Radio. May God bless you in all that you do.
Thank you, Joey. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Faith Positive Radio, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Suggest guests and ask questions when you email Dr. Joey at info@getpositive.today. And be sure to get your free gift of the 5 positive business conversations to have today coaching program at getpositive.today. Until next time, may God bless you with everything your heart can hope for and more than your mind can imagine.